Have you ever wondered if it would take you years to master bird and wildlife photography? After judging hundreds of thousands of photos in the last 5 years in various photo contests as judge, I realized that many photographers, actually many of my students, when they first joined my program, make a mistake. They actually got the orders wrong in learning bird and wildlife photography. So today in this video I'm going to share with you 3 stages of mastery in bird and wildlife photography that could save you years. And some of my students told me that after they learned what I taught them, it actually saved them even 10 years in their photography. So with that said, let me share with you the first lesson or the first stage in if you are new or even if you are a seasoned professional. I think there's just this guy flying by. Let me just share with you the first mistake that a lot of people do, and it is that we must. So this is the first very important thing for mastery of anything. I think the most important thing is to put yourself in a situation, in an opportunity where you can make, believe me, this is real, but it almost sounds a little bit crazy, is to put yourself in an opportunity where you can make the most mistakes in the shortest time. And what I mean by that is that, Tin Man, are you crazy? I don't want to make mistakes, I just want to take good photos. Well, the thing is, you need to have the most opportunities where you can make mistakes. And then by making those mistakes, you realize what is going on and then you change. So let me tell you what is the most important thing for bird and wildlife photography that many people didn't teach me. So, you know, when you go out and then you want to buy a camera and lens and you go into these forums or websites, they'll tell you these beautiful cameras with a lot of pixels and lenses with a lot of zoom range and lightweight and those, but they usually forgot one very important thing. That important thing is bird and wildlife photography is very different from many other genres of photography in that birds and animals, they are fast, they are elusive, and they don't wait for you to set up a tripod and slowly get your settings right to get the photos. And a lot of the time they show up and then by the time you are ready, they are gone. So one of the most important thing, which is the first stage in mastering bird and wildlife photography, is to practice your speed, to make yourself so good at getting birds in flight. Perfect. So what I mean by that is birds are usually fast flying, peregrine falcon, tree swallows, they're super fast, right? So think about it, right? A lot of the photographers, what they're gonna do is say, hey, I really want to get myself ready to become good in bird and wildlife photography. So what I do is I buy the most expensive lens and then I would go out and join some of the most the fanciest wildlife and bird tours, following some of the most famous photographers. The problem is, if you don't even have the skill yet, when you go out, then it's gonna waste a lot of opportunities. So the first thing to do, if I were to do it again, is actually to have a list of locations that I know that there will be a lot of birds that are flying around, and then you go there and practice 2 things. So for example, I would say I live in California, right? And every July in Boca Chica, there used to be, now I'm not too sure, but there used to be a lot of common terns, these little beautiful birds that they would fly around and then they would dive down into the water, like something like this kind of places, and then they will catch fish. So if you go to a place where there will be tens or hundreds of those birds flying around and keep flying down, it will give you a lot of opportunities than like in the beginning, I make this mistake. I would go into some local pier, and then there will be a local osprey on the telephone pole, and then I will wait for them to take off and then get a photo of them in flight. The problem is sometimes after work, right? I had a full-time job, and after work, they usually would have already finished a fish. So they're just waiting and I would just be waiting for hours. And then, you know, when it's dark, or maybe when the condition is not good, then they took flight. And you may get a few shots looking at the sky. And by the way, if you are doing a lot of bird and in-flight photography, having the sky as the background is not bad, but it's actually bad because it just doesn't show like that. You know, the photo is just so boring with the sky for the birds. So you try to practice getting the you know, in a higher level, like eye level with the birds, so that the background is something more interesting, right? So anyway, so what happened in the beginning of my photography is I would go there and then wait for hours and hours for this one flight. The problem is that I only get one practice, right? So that is the problem for a lot of the photographers, is they don't like put themselves into a position where they can practice hundreds and hundreds of times in even just one outing. So if you have a list of locations each month where you can surround yourself with the most opportunities for these birds in flight. And so like for example, let's get back into the terns example, right? So these terns, after they dive down in the water, they will come up, and then sometimes they will shake because they want to get dry, right? So this shaking motion will have them look like flying upside down, and like sometimes they flip the fish in mid-air and then dive down to catch them. So there are a lot of this crazy action that you can capture. And by practicing hundreds of times in one evening, for example, you will have this sense. I don't know if you guys understand what I mean. Like that confidence when you raise your camera and lenses, you almost get the birds right in the perfect point in the viewfinder to get that sharp photo. So I would say that for the first stage, maybe you can go to places like Florida in the springtime, where there are a lot of these cattle egrets, cormorants, and those birds, and they are nesting. So a lot of time they will be bringing back nesting materials. So you also get a lot of those opportunities. And then the terns is one of the ideas, and also burrowing owls in certain places in America when they have chicks, right? A lot of the time the parents will keep bringing back food, right? So those are the opportunities. Instead of going to a place where in the beginning I used to go to these places like bird refuge, there are a lot of birds, but they are usually very skittish, and they're not really doing anything interesting, right? Because what I mean by that is that if you are going to a time when these cormorants are bringing back nesting materials to feed the chicks or something like that, or not on the nesting time, after the nesting time they have the chicks, right? So they have to keep on flying, and because of that you get a lot of chances to get those in flight. So the first stage of practice is to get yourself into those situations, so that you get a portfolio of photos where the birds is like full frame incoming to you, or maybe flying sideways with like the most beautiful pose of the wings. So instead of the wings kind of like this, you either like perfectly up or perfectly down, and then like nice head angle and stuff like that. So and then afterwards, what I want you to practice on is to get not just the birds coming into you. Basically, I don't want you to block the view of the birds, but sometimes when the birds are flying around, if you hide yourself nicely, the birds will look like they are flying towards you, right? So those are usually very good practice, because incoming shots are more challenging, and it is a much better time now to do bird in-flight photography, because with the eye tracking for most of the camera brands these days, the bird eye focus, animal eye focus, especially the bird focus, is so easy to get the birds in flight perfectly. So all you need is just to practice a few times, really, and then you master that. instead of back in the days where you have to change the focus point and other stuff. So right after you nail this birds in flight photos perfectly, I don't, in terms of perfect, it is not to say, okay, I get a birds in flight, I'm just gonna do a major crop of the image so that you lose a lot of pixels. I want the photos to be like near, like at least half of 50% of the frame after the crop. And then you practice to, like for example, if you go to a place like this, right? Like if the birds are flying here, you know, this kind of background is gonna be very distracting, right? So you kind of look around and say like, hey, if the birds is flying maybe like a little bit closer to me and then the distance is further away, then the background with a nicer blur, and then the photo will be much better. So the first stage is to focus on getting this sideways or burst incoming with this perfect green background or some other colors of backgrounds like, you know, practice like 2,000 of a second, depending on the speed of the birds. You just practice that. And so, for example, bald eagle may be a little bit slow flying, but you know, some places in Seattle area, in Washington, you can also get them to aggregate near, during the salmon run, and then they'll do that, and so you have a lot of opportunities. And in Haines, I heard that there is I haven't been there, but there's a bald eagle festival, and you can also get, you can see a lot of these bald eagles hanging around. And then in Bosque del Apache in New Mexico, every year from November to February, you can also get a lot of geese and cranes in flight. And those snow geese, they fly pretty fast, and so those and also there are harriers too over there. So if you have time, you can spend a few days there and just try to focus on getting those incoming shots or flying like full frame side view shots. And the thing is, after you go to those places a few times, you suddenly will have such a strong understanding about how to nail a super sharp photo with a perfect background. Like the thing is like nature is like this. is not gonna be like a studio. The problem is, the thing is that if you can get a background that looks like a studio, people are gonna react to the photos, and the photo will look much more professional. So that is why the thing is, like when you go into the field, you kind of look around the places, and immediately you want to identify places where there are different kinds of background, and depending on how you want to capture your shots, then you move around, so that after the first stage, you have a portfolio of multiple species of birds. Like for example, if you're interested in short-eared owls, you do some research to how to find them, terns, black skimmers, and egrets and cormorants and those birds in Florida places, like those. So that once you master that will already give you a much more better advantage when you actually go into a important trip. And when the animal shows up, when everybody is trying to fumbling about where to find the animal, getting the setup and getting the settings and stuff, you already get the shots, right? So that is, but however, this is only the first stage of mastery of photography, and a lot of people actually stop right there. And indeed, I was one of those people in the beginning. After I spent some time perfecting those, I am so happy. And I share these photos. People will say, "Oh my God, this is crazy mad skill. How do you get this peregrine falcon sharp? In the banking pose, backside. Like how do you get high up from the peregrine falcon? Like everybody are photographing them on a cliff and like shooting downward, so you can get those, and then you can get all these. Puffins is also another good place that you should research. There are some places in Europe where you can get pretty close to them. That's a very good practice. Puffins, tree swallows, terns, and those birds are very good practice. Peregrine falcon is a little bit different because they don't fly all the time, so you only get a few flyby chances. And the thing, remember, I mentioned, is to have an opportunity where you can make them have the most encounter and make the most as many mistakes as you can, and then you have that skill. And so now that you have the skill, and that's what I did when I had the skill to photograph these birds. I have a whole list of like incoming burrowing owls, short-eared owls, head tern, all these things. And some of the professional bird photographers say, oh wow, this is really cool. But when I show it to my friends and families and online and stuff, the reaction was unfortunately much slower, like kind of crickets. And when I posted, and I felt so unhappy because I said, I spent so much effort to get these amazing photos. I want to share that happiness and joy with people. However, people are not really reacting, and I thought I must be doing something wrong, because I got the praise from some of the peers who are into that. And it would take me a while until it dawned on me to face the reality that, when we are doing visual arts, one of the goals, at least to me, is to be able to learn how to evoke emotion in viewers, like how to make them happy, how to make them cry, how to make them deeply moved so that they'll take action, maybe they'll help the animals, or they get more interested in nature, or just share the happiness in overall. So that got into the second stage of bird and wildlife photography and mastery of that, which is, instead of doing all these birds and stuff, which now you have mastered the speed, the second thing is to try to go into every element. So there is a story that I love that was written by Robert McKee in his famous legendary book called Story, and in it there is it's a millipede. And the millipede, they have many. This millipede has many pair of legs, right? And so he was like walking every day, happy and stuff, and it was really nice. And one time, one of his friends asked him how did he control every pair of his feet so that he doesn't fall over. And this millipede thought about it and said, that is true. And then he started to play with all the muscles and all the stuff, and he started to stumble, he started to fall over, because now suddenly when he was so aware of what he's doing, he actually couldn't do it anymore, and he kept on falling and falling off and stuff, until one time he started to practice using one muscle at a time. I think there's a kingfisher there. It's quite amazing that I can hear it from the waves. And he said, okay, I need to start from the ground up. It's almost like if you guys watch Rocky, I mean, I'm a big fan of that. When you won something by accident or something like that, and you never win again, you gotta be brutally honest with yourself and start going back to the beginning, right? So that's why Rocky went back, to one of these beginning gym by Apollo Creek and started to learn all the basics. And that is exactly what that millipede was learning. And once he started to learn every muscles and how it works and stuff, now he not only can walk again, but he can actually dance and stuff. And that story was really endearing to me. But anyway, so now that you have mastered the speed, right? You get all these amazing incoming shots of all these fast birds. The problem is you haven't learned how to evoke the emotion of the viewers. And how do you do that? You have to really break it down by what kind of light, what kind of complementary colors in the photo, what kind of composition, what kind of perspective and behavior, and how the placement of the animal in the frame, how people react to it. And I missed that completely in the beginning. I thought that it's all about, in your face, portraits, incoming action, crazy action and stuff. But turned out it's not, because we are humans, and humans react to certain things and don't react to certain things. So what I would suggest on the second phase is to break it down by first going into some crazy hours, pre-dawn, after dusk, and like today is an overcast day, right? So what it means is that the light is pretty soft. It's like a soft box filtering the light, so the light direction is no longer that important. You can kind of go everywhere, and the shadow on my face is kind of the same. But if there is sun out and no cloud, the light direction becomes very critical in terms of like how the shadow is doing. Is the shadow harsh or not, depending on the time of the day? And I would highly suggest you to try to go out in the crack of dawn, in the dark, and try to play with different kind of lights, because when the light is very low, and just like the first ray of light, or even like half an hour before sunrise, the color of the sky is turning purple and those. And when you master how to do low light photography without creating a lot of noise, even though people will say, Topaz denoise, DxO, all this noise removing software is so powerful, we need to care. But for me, and when I talk to some of my colleagues who do a lot of exhibits and galleries and print sales, it still matters to have relatively low ISO. No matter what you say, it's kind of like when you're doing this art thing, you want to challenge yourself, right? Why would you want to rely just on technology instead of perfecting your craft, right? So anyway, so the next step is to try different kind of light, different angles, and then see how people react to it. And that is the best time to have a group of like-minded people. Like if you see somebody in online and you like them and you start to talk to them, because it's very important to have a very honest feedback about your photos. Does it work? Does it not work? It's not just about sharpness and background. It's really about a lot of components. The placement, is it rule of third? Does the rule of third works? And these days, rule of third might not even work, because everybody are doing that. And when every photos are kind of the same, then you can really evoke the emotion like before. Actually, it's fun. You don't feel that it is the end of the world, because some of my students told me that like the world doesn't need another bear photo, the world doesn't need another lion photos, and Tin Man, I give up. And that's when they first joined. And then time and again, it proved to them that with like some of the common species, you can still get amazing photos when you know how to utilize the lights. How do you use creative composition? How do you utilize the pattern, the texture of the frame to do it? So for example, if you're already putting the animals in the perfect corners of the rule of third, you may actually want to move the animal even more extreme to the corners of the frame to create a more stronger diagonal feeling, or graphic designer kind of feeling, and play with it and see how people react. So basically, for example, how do you combine the complementary color of blue versus gold, like something that inspirations from oil painters like grandmasters like Van Gogh, Caravaggio, Rembrandt, and those, and then started to experiment with different colors, different composition, different perspective, and with the species that you already have. Right? And once you do that, and I will still remember one time I photographed a fox, and the gurus, the professionals would teach me, okay, the light must be behind you so that perfect lighting on the animal, no harsh shadow, and on a fox. I think that was what fox was that? It's the gray fox that my friend told me to go with him, and so I was very privileged to see that. But the thing is, I was just asking myself, like I just don't like to follow rules, and and sometimes when the light is really beautiful, I just follow what my heart feels. And there was a moment when the light was hitting sideways, and I think that photo, and then the background was in the shadow, and that photo was really nice, and I took it, and somehow when I posted it, and the photo was, many people requested a print of that photo, and I remember one couple asked me, can I buy a print? And I said, I've never saw a print, and that was quite surprised. And they said, oh, this photo, not only they like it, but it reminded them of a fox family that used to live in the basement of their house many years ago, and the reason is because the photo is like this atmosphere that just triggered them. So it's not about the species, it's actually about the surrounding of that species that really triggered that emotion. And after that, I just went all in, because when a photo would trigger somebody to pay me a few $1,000s to purchase when they don't even know me. You know, that at the time I just really just started photography and just posting, and that must be the reason. So I spent a lot of time to study all the oil painters, masters, and different genres of photographers. You know, in street photography, portrait photography, landscape, and all kinds of visual arts to really understand what are these components, and it really opened up a whole new world. And once I mastered those, and not only do I master the light, the composition, but I also mastered, I learned from a lot of people. God, how much money did I spend? But it's all worth it. And I learned about all the subtle details on, you know, editing, like how do you not over edit, but really bring out the soul of the image. And once by doing that, you know, people are giving me feedback, giving me response that was really exactly what I did. I still remember one time I tried those, and you guys know about, you know, Instagram, when they would like the account every year, by the end of the year, there is an app where you click on it, and then they will pick the top 9 photos of the years, right? Basically the photos that got the most engagement and the likes. And I remember this one year, I saw that NANPA, you know, North American Nature Photographer Association, picked the top 9 photos of their year. So they sometimes share photos from photographers, sometimes they invite photographers to share their work and stuff, and I happened to share a few photos that year, right? And so they picked the 9 most liked photos of the year, and you can imagine, right, 365 days, and each day they may have multiple posts and stuff. And surprisingly, like, because once I understand that the second stage of bird and wildlife photography, they picked 6 of their 9 photos. 6 of their 9 photos that they picked from that top 9 were photos of mine, and that really gave me a lot more confidence in knowing that photography is not just about nailing the shot of, you know, crazy sharpness, perfect light and background. It's a lot deeper than that. So that is really the second stage of photography, is to really understand how do you nail those moments, that you know exactly which moments, like the millipede, which muscles really triggers the walking, so that the photo will become this harmonious force, right? So I've been over the so many judging sections with legendary photographers. I realized that, you know, a few very interesting insights that I learned from them is when they look at a photo, a lot of time they don't just look at the moments, they don't look at the sharpness, but what they do is say, how are their eyes moving in the photos? I mean, what do you mean by eyes moving in the photo? It's not how the animal's eyes are moving in the photo, but it's about how the photos make their eyes move, right, in that photo. And that requires like a whole new world of understanding about the elements of the photos, right? So anyway, so that is second stage. Good to have a group of friends, and if you can find some mentors who are undergoing that kind of struggle before, who might also have a full-time job, and then they have limited time to photograph them, and then you go with them to take a few photos, practice and stuff. That would be good. And then now we get into the third stage, which is actually what many photographers, especially some of my students, when they began, they told me about their approach, and that is the order that has some issues. So many of the photographers, when they go in and say, okay, I'm serious about this, I'm going to buy the best lenses, I'm going to go to the best places, Kenya, Alaska, Antarctica, all the top places for wildlife, and I'll do it. But actually, after you master the first two, and if you, for example, if you can get some photos going viral with some common species that is just from your backyard, from your neighborhood, not too far away, that already showed it's actually more valuable than going into extreme places and get super rare animals. And don't get me wrong, I really admire photographers who, risk their life to, wait for long hours for those moments. However, if you don't have the skill of stage 1 and 2, when an animal shows up, you are getting a photo of a sharp photo. So an analogy of that is almost like if there are 15 photographers lining next to you, and if the animal shows up and everybody are getting the same photo, right? So that is the problem. But if you have your creative eyes and you also have a skill that, you know, before people actually get the cameras ready, you already took like 50 photos, because in these days, you know, 30 frames per second, if you're fast, you can actually get a lot more photos before everybody get ready. So that's stage 1, where you practice. Stage 2 is you know exactly what are the elements, how the background, the color, the lights, the leading lines, composition, perspective, moments, you know, atmosphere, you know, how the editing skill to make this perfect. And then you get the photo that really shows your mastery. And that is what I want to tell you, because I think we are all, if you love birds and wildlife, we are all already privileged to be in the wilderness, that the animals and birds will give us a glimpse of the beauty, the secret life, right? So I think everybody every wildlife and bird photographer have a responsibility, because they already freely give us, not really freely, including the trip, but I mean they let us see their beautiful, amazing, majestic moments, and I think we have to give them back something, which is to share the beauty with the world, so that, you know, sometimes maybe you get lucky and some people actually want to help them, and, you know, and people can see our art, see our expression, and then also can do something for these birds and animals. So with that said, so these are the 3 stages of photography that I would do if, you know, I'm starting over again. To master, number 1 is the fast speed, number 2 is low light, crazy lights and angles and composition, those, and then the third one is finally, that's when I didn't talk about the third stage yet. So the third stage is when you actually go into those trips. So you do a lot of research, and don't just go to places where there are a lot of sightings of amazing, stunning animals, but actually you look into the photos of that surrounding and see if it matches something that you learned from the second stage, of what emotion you can trigger in those places, and focus on going back to the same place again and again if that place can generate a lot of good photos like that, instead of, you know, just kind of like a collection of you know, tokens, kind of like, okay, I'm going to this place, I'm going to go around the world, because you want to decide like what you want to be known for, what kind of animals, what are you're most passionate about, and you love them the most, and then you just focus on a field, and I think that would be the best way. And yeah, so hope that helps. And if you are interested to learn more, I think one of the key things for mastering the first stage of photography is not only about the background and the settings and stuff, but also the exposure. The exposure is very important, because once you have blown out highlights, or if you underexpose the photo, you can fix it in post-processing, but it's actually still not good, because, you know, again, you want to perfect your skill, not to use tools to help fix it. If you can get the perfect photo in the frame already, that brings a lot of satisfaction. So if you're interested in that, I have a video right here that talks about after I tested so many metering methods, I find the one that is best for my kind of photography. So if you like my photography, definitely check it out on that, and I will see you next time.